Have you realized that a loved one, your father, your grandfather, or even a dear neighbor, started acting differently, collided, more distant, as if slowly moving away from the world, saying nothing? It may seem just a phase, a moment of introspection, but what if these behaviors are in fact silent signs that he is saying goodbye to life? That's right. Few people know, but the elderly body and mind begin to give subtle signals when they feel the end is close. And unfortunately, most ignore or interpret these behaviors wrongly. If you are over 40, 50, or 60, or live with someone in this age group, this video can be one of the most important you will see in the near future. Because when it comes to emotional and silent farewell, it's not just about aging, but of recognizing the signs that announce a goodbye that no one means aloud. Careful. These signs may be right in front of you, and you didn't notice. Many elderly, for pride, fear, or resignation, do not ask for help. They just change the tone of voice, change the way they look at life, change small habits of everyday life. And these changes, although they seem harmless, carry deep messages from a tired body, a soul that feels that it has already fulfilled its mission. Did you know that there is a pattern of behavior that repeats itself among the elderly, who are preparing even unconsciously to the end? They are not obvious medical symptoms. They are emotional, social, and even spiritual attitudes that reveal a gradual dismissal. And no, we are not talking about terminal diseases or clinical diagnoses. We are talking about something more subtle, something you only realize if you look with your heart. Today, I will show you the 5 silent behaviors that many older people begin to have when they are saying goodbye to life in silence. And most importantly, how can you recognize these signs in time to act, to be present, to offer a gesture of affection, a conversation, a presence that is perhaps what it needs most now? This video is not about fear. It is about attention, empathy, and love. It is about not letting the last moments without understanding what is being said, even in silence. And it is also about taking care of the emotional and mental health of our elderly, something that many ignore until it's too late. So if you want to know what these signs are, stay with me. Because what you will learn here can completely change the way you see that elderly who live by your side. It can be a neighbor, a relative, or even you, feeling these transformations inside and not knowing how to explain. Sometimes silence speaks much more than words. And now the time has come to learn to listen to him. Let's start with the first of these signs, the one who goes unnoticed by almost everyone, but who carries a powerful message: emotional isolation. Suddenly that old man who was previously communicative, who liked to talk, tell stories, or simply to hear what was happening around, begins to silence. Avoid talking about the future. Stop making plans. It only responds with yes or no. It spends most of the time alone, even when surrounded by people. This is not just loneliness. It is a clear sign that he is slowly disconnecting himself of his life, as if he was getting the house inside to leave silently. Many think this is normal of age, that every elderly is quiet over time. But it's not quite. Silence can be a stuffy scream, a request for attention, care, understanding. It is therefore so important that you understand what is being revealed in this video. Not just watching out of curiosity, but watching with an open heart, with the sensitivity of those who really care. And since you got here, I want to ask you something. Leave your comment below. Tell me if you have already noticed any behavior like that in someone close, if any of these attitudes remind you of someone, or even if you are going through this. Their reports help other people realize that they are not alone. They create a network of empathy, support, something that is urgent these days, especially for our elderly. It also takes advantage and leaves your like, because it shows YouTube that this theme is important and needs to reach more people. How many families could avoid regrets? How many children could give a last most conscious hug if they knew how to recognize these signs in time? So your like and inscription do much more than strengthening the channel. They help this message save bonds, prevent the silence that hurts. If you are not already inscribed here, click the red button now and activate the bell. I bring weekly emotional health content, silent behaviors, and everything that can help you to better understand who is by your side, especially our elderly, who need to be heard, seen, and respected so much. And now, take a deep breath, because the next sign is even deeper and goes unnoticed by most people. And if I told you that many elderly, When they feel that the end is close, don't shout for help, don't ask for help, don't make a fan, they simply change. It changes your look, changes the routine, changes until the way of existing. It's like inside, they were already disconnecting from the world, in silence. Many of these signs are not easy to identify, mainly because they happen very subtly. But they are there every day, present in gestures and choices, in the tone of the voice, in prolonged silences. And the more we ignore, the more we lose the chance to be present in the moments that really matter. The truth is that many elderly people do not know how to ask for help, and sometimes they don't even want to. They just feel they have already given them all, who lived what they had to live. And when that feeling sets in, they start to retreat, almost like the one who goes off the light of the room slowly, not to scare anyone. You may have already noticed that. Perhaps a father who no longer asks for his children so much. A grandfather who previously made a point of being at the dining table, but now he prefers to stay in the room, even with a full house. A neighbor who was excited, who grew with a wide smile, and now only waves from afar, with his eyes low. It may seem passing sorrow, boredom, or even a simple change in behavior, but most of the time it's much more than that. It is a silent emotional process that begins inside, and almost no one realizes until it is too late. Therefore, it is essential to talk about this topic, especially when we talk about emotional health in old age, because unlike many think, the farewell does not always happen in hospitals. It is not always preceded by disease or physical pain. Often it begins in emotional, mental, spiritual, and that is precisely where the danger lives. Because the biggest mistake many make is to think that the elderly are just aging, that the removal is normal, that silence is natural to age, only it is not. There are signs that cannot be ignored, signs that show that the person you love may be preparing silently to leave. And this match doesn't have to be immediate, no. It can be a farewell that happens slowly, in daily, imperceptible doses, until it becomes definitive. And the question I ask you is, are you really attentive to that? Ignoring these signs can make you lose your chance to give one last conscious hug, to hear that last story carefully, to say what never had the courage, to apologize, to thank, to love with presence. It is not about creating fuss. It is about awakening sensitivity, about recognizing the importance of human connection in the last chapters of life. Because time goes by, and what is possible today, tomorrow can be too late. And there is no longer regret than that it was not present when it mattered most. When someone you love was trying to tell you, even if in silence, who was leaving. Most people only realize this when it's late. And then they try to cling to photos, memories, smell, but they can no longer hold their hands or look in the eyes. So, I repeat, pay attention. Be aware of the small changes. Because it is in them that the signal lives. The silent warning. The disguised farewell. That behavior that no one understands but has a giant emotional weight for those who are living. An old man who walks away, who no longer wants to leave home, who stops calling the birthdays, who begins to donate personal effects, who avoids talking about tomorrow. This old man is saying a lot. Only his way, the silent way, the way you have learned to be strong all your life and now just wants to leave in peace without disturbing, without causing pain, without being a burden. But he is not a burden. He is history. He is wisdom, he is love, and deserves to be heard, understood, welcomed. Even when you don't know how to ask that, especially when you don't know how to ask that, the emotional health of the elderly is an urgent theme, and our role, such as children, grandchildren, friends, or caregivers, is to learn to identify these signs before it's late. It's not just a matter of taking care of food, medical examinations, physical pain. This is all important, of course. But as important as it is to take care of the soul, mind, the feeling of belonging. Because a body may be fine, but when the soul begins to say goodbye, the body soon accompanies. And do you know what is most painful? Many elderly people accept this process because they believe they no longer have value, that no one else wants to hear their stories, that your opinions no longer matter, that your emotional pains are something that complains too much. They carry this silencio as a kind of invisible armor, and we, who are outside, follow in a hurry, distractions with excuses, until the day this absence becomes definitive, and all that remains is regret, the emptiness, the silence that was already a sign, but was only understood when it became absence. And that's why I make this video, to remind you of what really matters, to invite you to look more affectionately at that elderly who is by your side, so you don't have to feel up front the weight of not having noticed, because love, when it is true, translates into presence, in listening, in attention to the details, to know that a simple "how are you" can open doors for conversations that save, cure, comfort. Sometimes all the elderly needs is someone to see. May you see it beyond age, beyond wrinkles, beyond slowness. Someone who understands that he still has a lot to teach, and that his presence, even in silence, is still a valuable gift. If you have gotten here, it is because you feel inside that this content is important, that this kind of conversation needs to be more common, that talking about emotional farewells in a sensitive and respectful way is necessary, because the farewell, when perceived, can be lighter. It can be accompanied, can be honored. It can be made with love, connection, with peace. And that's what I want to show you in the next few minutes. How to perceive the signs, how to act, how to be present, how to take care of those who have always taken care of you. And if at some point you saw yourself in this story, or remembered someone special, write here in the comments, "I realized the signal," or "It touched me." I want to know who is feeling this message, who has lived or is living something similar. Your comment is not only important to me, but for all the people who are reading and seeking strength to also understand these signs in everyday life. And if you haven't enjoyed this video yet, do it now. Not because it is a common request, but because you know how much this message can reach more hearts. The more likes, the more YouTube distributes. More people find out what you are discovering now. And it is exactly at this point that we need to deepen our gaze. Because what comes now is even stronger, more impactful. These are behaviors that, when they arise, usually go unnoticed or treated with indifference, but they do not appear by chance. They are signs. These are emotional codes that many elderly people emit, even without realizing it, when they feel the end is near. And the first of these behaviors, perhaps the most common, but also the most ignored, is emotional isolation and excessive silence. Suddenly, that old man who was once sociable, present in the conversations, interested in the routine of the house, begins to shut up. He no longer involves himself, no opinion, avoids answering long questions, collecting himself in distant thoughts. It's not lazy, it's not boredom, it's not just tired. It is a real emotional distance. He is slowly turning off, from the inside out. This silence speaks a lot. It is as if he are saying, "I no longer do part of the future." And this is painful, not only for those who live this process inside, but for those who observe and do not know how to act. The elderly begins to avoid planning, does not want to know the birthday, or the holiday party, or the gifts, and when you try to pull subject, he responds with monosyllables. Sometimes it doesn't even respond. Stay there, quiet, looking at nothing, or in, where all this farewell lives. This kind of behavior needs to be taken seriously, because it is a clear indicative that he may be losing his desire to continue, not for lack of love for life, but for believing that life no longer sees him anymore. Soon after that, often comes disinterest in their own health, and this is very common in the elderly who are in this silent farewell process. They stop taking the medicines, forget the consultations on purpose. They say they are not hungry. They refuse lunch, coffee, dinner. They don't want to do the exams. They don't want to know about doctors' results, treatments. It seems resistance, stubbornness, but most of the time it is withdrawal. It's as if they are saying, "Why keep taking care of myself if I no longer see anymore?" And this is one of the greatest emotional traps of old age, because many see their own care as something that is no longer worth it, and it hurts, because it reveals how much the emotional is committed, how much that person may be suffering inside but unable to express this suffering clearly. Then another signal that appears very subtle, but carries a giant weight, are the farewells disguised in small conversations. You may have heard phrases like, "I've ever lived everything I had to live," or, "If I leave now, I'm already at peace," or even, "I'm tired of tud thee." These phrases seem banal, but they are deeply symbolic. They are phrases that the elderly people are in random times, and what hurts most is that a lot of people ignore these lines, or react with irony. "Stop it, man," or "home to talk bullshit, mother." And the elderly, seeing that his feeling is devalued, shuts up even more, guard for you, and says goodbye in silence. It is important that we stop and reflect. When was the last time you heard really what was an elderly from your family saying with the heart, not just the words? Another sign that also needs a lot of attention is when the elderly begins to donate personal effects. This seems like a gesture of generosity, but in many cases it is deeper than that. Suddenly he calls a grandson and delivers a watch he used for years. Give the hat that never took it from the head to a friend. Deliver clothes, books, old photos. It begins to make a kind of emotional sharing. This is much more than detachment. It is emotional organization for the end. It is as if he is closing cycles, giving pieces of his own story to those he loves, not as a simple memory, but as a legacy. As if I were saying, even without saying, "Take care of it for me. I'm already going." And finally, one of the most exciting and revealing signs, the search for reconciliation or forgiveness. It is very common that the elderly, when they feel they are approaching the end, want to solve what was pending. Sometimes it is an apology that has been stuck for years. Other times, it is the desire to meet a brother with whom he hasn't spoken for decades. It is the desire to call that friend of youth. It's the urge to send a message to someone who hurt or was hurt. They begin to revisit the past. And this is not nostalgia. It is healing. It is attempt to end life with a light heart, from departing with less pain, less guilt, less regret. These searches for reconciliation often happen without warning. Suddenly he touches the subject, asks for someone that no one even remembered anymore. He speaks of an old episode with tears in his eyes. Want to visit a specific place where something important happened. These are signs that something inside is asking for peace, and our role, such as children, grandchildren, friends, caregivers, is to support this process. Welcome to here. Facilitate these meetings whenever possible, because sometimes all an elderly person needs is a last chance to say what the heart has kept for a lifetime. These 5 behaviors, emotional isolation, disinterest in health, disguised farewells, donation of personal goods, and pursuit of forgiveness, are signs that speak louder than any clinical examination. They are emotional signs, behavioral and spiritual, and they need to be seen carefully, with respect, with empathy, because when we can see these silent messages, we have the opportunity to make a difference, to be present, to show that there is still love, connection, presence, to make this elderly feel seen, valued, important. And if you at some point have already noticed one of these behaviors in someone you love, comments down here. Write, for example, "I've seen this happen," or "It reminded me of my father." These comments are not just for engagement, they help other people who are going through the same situation. They create a space for reception, exchange, support. And when we start paying attention to these silent behaviors, the next step is to understand what is really behind them. Because no gesture, no change in attitude happens by chance. There is always an emotional reason, an internal history, a deep process that is gradually forming, sometimes invisible to the eyes but extremely present in the routine of the elderly. And these behaviors, which at first seem only passing through passing or tiredness by age, are often the result of an accumulation of not expressed feelings, old frustrations, and harsh realities that the elderly opens. This is why it is so important to understand that behind the decision of an elderly person isolating himself, stops taking medicine, starting to distribute his belongings, or seeking old reconciliations, there is a very strong emotional root, often neglected or misunderstood. One of the main causes behind these signs is not diagnosed depression in old age. Yes, depression in the elderly is a more common reality than you think, and the most worrying, it is little spoken and even less treated. Many confuse symptoms with age of age or mourning old, when in fact what is happening is a silent, constant suffering that is consuming the desire to live slowly and almost invisible. A depressed elderly does not cry like a teenager. He silences. He erases slowly. He ceases to exist in life. And that is why so many people only perceive when the situation is already advanced, when that glow has already been lost, and the routine has been abandoned, and the routine has been abandoned, and the routine interest in living, for being, interacting, simply cease to exist. This is not just. Another emotional factor that weighs too much is the feeling of end of cycle. The elderly looks back and begins to take stock of life. He revisits choices, remembers errors, misses people who are gone, thinks of the dreams he has not made. It is a kind of emotional inventory that many do in silence. And this process, as natural as it may be, can be very painful, because the memories do not always come lightly. Sometimes they come with repentance, guilt, with that one that hurts. It could have done different. And when that feeling settles hard, he can become an emotional end, even if life is still there, pulsating. The elderly feels that he has already completed his mission, which has nothing else to contribute. He feels that his story is in the end. Even biologically, there is still time. And this thought, if not welcomed, can be the push for complete emotional disconnection. Added to this, we have one of the most cruel and silent factors, the lack of purpose. Although many people feel useful because of the work, the creation of their children, the administration of the house, the social commitments. But when retirement arrives, children grow up, friends move away or leave. The body no longer follows the pace of before. That emptiness comes. And it is in this emptiness that many are lost, because they no longer know what their role is. They feel they are no longer for anything, that are just taking up space. And this feeling is devastating. An elderly who feels that he has lost his purpose also loses the desire to continue. He comes into existence, but without actually living. And this is one of the biggest triggers for the farewell behaviors we talked earlier. Now, going beyond the emotional, it is impossible not to talk about the physical factors that directly influence the emotional and mental state of an elderly. The presence of chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, arthrosis, renal failure, among many others, imposes a routine of limitations, pain, and frustrations that few understand. These diseases do not only take health, they take autonomy, self-esteem, freedom to come and go. And when the body becomes an obstacle, when it all starts to hurt, tired, to make it difficult, it is natural for the elderly to begin to close, to isolate themselves. He no longer wants to leave because he feels ashamed of his condition, because you feel it depends on others, because you feel that you have lost control of your own life. And that weighs, it hurts, it wears emotionally in a way that many can't verbalize. Along with this, there are silent diagnoses, which often only appear when they are already at an advanced stage. Cancer, for example, is a disease that, in many cases, evolves silently in the elderly body. And even when the diagnosis has not been formally given, the body is already beginning to warn. Constant fatigue, lack of appetite, inexplicable pain, weight loss. The elderly feels something is wrong, but often keeps for themselves. He is afraid to find out, fear of worrying about the family, fear of what may come later. So he pretends to be all right, disguise, but deep down, inside, he already knows. And this silent knowledge leads him to live a kind of early grief. He is already saying goodbye, even though no one around knows what is happening. These physical and emotional factors mix, feed, intensify each other. A sick body generates a fragile mind. A purposeless mind gets sick the body. And so, the cycle closes. And the elderly, increasingly, moves away from life, bonds, hope. And do you know what is the most common fear among the elderly who arrive at this point? It is not the fear of death. It is the fear of being forgotten, to be ignored, to go unnoticed, to die in life. Because for them, worse than the end of the body is the end of the memory. It is stop being important, to be necessary, to be loved. And this fear is so strong that it is often what motivates those farewell gestures. This is what leads them to seek reconciliation, to donate objects, to repeat stories. It is the attempt to leave a brand, to ensure that somehow will continue to exist in someone's heart. And here, maybe it's the deepest point of all this, because we live in a society that values the new, the fast, the useful, and the elderly often feel out of this standard. He feels it bothers. That does not accompany, that no longer has space. And when it settles in thought, he begins to shut up, to retract, not wanting to be a weight anymore. And this, added to all the factors we speak, generates this sequence of behaviors that many interpret as old mania, but are actually disguised help of help. And now I want you to stop and think, how many elderly are around you showing these signs? How many are living this silent emotional process without anyone noticing? And what can you do today to change that? Because sometimes a simple listening, a conversation, a gesture of affection can be the bridge between giving up on life and believing that there is still much to live. Right here in the comments, I understood what's behind, or I've seen this happen. And these comments help keep this conversation alive, help other people connect with this reality, and above all, make YouTube show this video to more people. And that's right at this point that everything can change. When you begin to see these signs sensitively, when you understand what is behind these silent farewell behaviors, the next step is to know how to react, how to act in a practical, human, and loving way. Because yes, there is still time. It is still possible to do different. It is still possible to prevent this farewell from happening without the person you love knowing how important it is, how much it is loved. But for that, you need to go beyond the automatic, get out of the rush of everyday rush, and learn to really listen, not with the ears, but with the heart. And when I speak of listening with my heart, I don't mean just listening to what the elderly say. It is deeper. It is paying attention to what he does not speak. It is to realize the silences between one sentence and another. It is to notice the tone of voice, the lost look, the body that is no longer in a hurry. Sometimes he speaks with his hands, the way he sit on, with the objects he chooses to keep or set aside. It is in this invisible space between the gesture and the word that the truth lives. To hear with your heart is to allow yourself to be there in full, without judging, without interrupting, without minimizing what he feels. Because the elderly do not need ready answers. He needs presence. From someone who validates your pain, who understands that feeling afraid of the end is normal. That understanding that life is coming to its final cycle is not drama, it is part of the human process. Many times he doesn't know how to start talking. Therefore, encourage conversations about what he naturally feels with patience. Ask simple questions but open deep doors. Ask how he has felt lately, what has been through his head in the last days. Ask the past, the stories he lived, what he missed. It is not about pulling confessions, but about creating space for him to know that he can speak, that he can open, that he will be heard without haste, without correction, without judgment. And if at first he avoids the matter, respect his time, but continue there. Because sometimes just knowing that someone is willing to listen already lights a light in the middle of darkness. And this light can be all it needs not to completely disconnect from life. In addition to listening, it is essential that you create significant moments in the present, because what most erodes the emotional of the elderly is the feeling that only the past matters, that the present is empty, that the future no longer exists. Therefore, every small attitude that shows that the now can be beautiful, light, important, makes a gigantic difference. A breakfast together, a laughing photo album, a youth song touched on the radio, a trip to the park just to feel the wind on the face. It is these moments that renew the sense of belonging. They show that even with limitations, it is still possible to live, smile, feel. The elderly needs to be remembered that life continues even in another rhythm, and that he is not just surviving, he can still live with dignity, affection, with emotion. And there's something very powerful that a lot of people forget to do. Help this old man rescue old dreams. That trip he always wanted to do and never did. That desire to learn something new, even if it seems small. A place he would like to review. A reunion with someone who marked his youth. A simple walk to the neighborhood fair where the childhood passed. All this carries huge emotional value. And when you allow him to live or relive these small dreams, you are saying with attitudes, you still matter. Your time is still precious. This in itself can completely change the way he sees himself, how he feels, as he perceives his own existence. It is not just about taking it to the doctor, to ensure that the exams are up to date, that the medicines are right. Of course, this is also necessary, but it is equally urgent to take you to a place he loves. Because emotional health is also with nature, laughs, memories, connecting with what is good. Sometimes a walk to the sea, to the house where he grew up, to the street where he lived, to the bench where he liked to sit and see the movement. This has a healing power that no medicine offers. The elderly brain illuminates when it is reconnected with true affections. His soul warms herself when she realizes that there are still those who care about what he feels, what he has lived, what he dreams. The touch also heals. The sincere hug, the hand given in the silence, the look that says, "I'm here," the phrase that many ignore, but it can be everything at that moment. "I love you." How many times did you say this to your father, to your grandfather, to your mother, to your grandmother? How many times have you looked into the back of your eyes and said, "Are you important to me?" We grow up thinking that the elders are invincible, that will be there forever, that do not need affection, care, affection. And this is a big lie. They need, they feel, they wait. Just don't ask, because they were taught to endure everything silent. But if you are the first to break this cycle, everything can change. And change now, not after. Because time does not warn. The farewell does not send a message. And you won't want to regret not doing what you could when there was still time. So if you have arrived here in this video, tell me, what are you going to do today by that elderly you love? What can you do today to show that it is not alone, that it is still seen, that is still necessary? Write here in the comments, "I'm present," or "There is still time." It also comments if this content has touched you, if you have remembered someone, if you have gone through something similar. Your comments are not just words. They create bridges, stories, connections. They show YouTube that this content needs to reach more people. And more than anything, they create a stream of empathy, humanity, care with those who have taken care of us so much. If you stayed with me here from the heart, my thank you. This shows that you really care about who is by your side, and it already makes you someone special. And since you arrived until the end of this video, I want to ask you 3 simple things, but they make all the difference for me and for this channel to continue growing. The first is, subscribes now on the channel. Activate Tininho so as not to lose the next content that, like this, will help you better understand emotional health, the silent behavior of the elderly, and how to create real connections you love. Here, every week there is a new video straight to the point with themes that really play. The second is, comments down here the phrase, "I take care of my heart." If you have arrived here, this phrase represents your commitment to care, love, respect for our elderly. And your comment also shows to YouTube that this content is important and deserves to reach more people. And finally, leave your like. This quick click is what makes this video keep spreading around and touching the hearts of other families. If he made sense to you, it will surely make sense to someone else. Oh, and it doesn't come out yet. Already click on the next video that is appearing here on the screen. It complements what you have just watched and will show you even more signs and attitudes that can save precious moments with those you love. Go there and continue with me.